Welcome to Basic Brewing Radio for Thursday, August 25th, 2016. I'm James Spencer. Here at Basic Brewing Radio, we're all about home brewing. Well, this week, our visit to good beer spots in the Baltimore and D.C. area continues with Right Proper Brewing and head brewer Nathan Zeender. You've heard him on this show with his good friend Mike Tonsmeyer, the mad fermentationist. Nathan gives us a tour of his production brewery and talks about his yeast-focused philosophy of brewing. If you're new to home brewing and would like to get into the hobby for the first time, check out our website, basicbrewing.com, where you can find archives of our audio and video podcasts and our DVDs, of course, to walk you through basic and more advanced brewing techniques. And if you buy any of our DVD combos, you get a free Basic Brewing bottle opener. Very nifty. And don't forget to get a copy of our Brewer's Logbook. You can use it to log and track up to 50 batches of beer. And just a reminder, we use PayPal, but you don't have to have a PayPal account. You can just use your credit card on the PayPal page when it pops up. Just click on the button there. You can follow me on Twitter. My username is Basic Brewing, all one word. We have a Basic Brewing Radio and Basic Brewing video page on Facebook at facebook.com/basicbrewing. Thanks again to everybody clicking on the Amazon.com associate link on our basicbrewing.com site. Whenever you think of Amazon shopping, think of us first and click on our associate link on basicbrewing.com. You can shop as you normally do. You won't notice any difference. It won't cost you any extra, but we will notice a great deal of difference. You'll be helping us to bring you the show, and we greatly appreciate your support. We also have associate links for Brew Your Own magazine and the American Homebrewers Association on our site as well. You can find our Basic Brewing iPhone app on iTunes, our Android app on Amazon.com. We have a Windows phone app. We're on the BlackBerry podcast directory, and we're on the Stitcher app as well. And we're also on Google Play Music. If you want to put a tip in our tip jar, some coinage in our virtual guitar case, you can go to basicbrewing.com/support, and thanks to everybody who's done so already. Taking a look into the mailbag, I'm still getting good response and good tips on sous vide cooking after the most recent Basic Brewing video episode, where Steve cooked up some sous vide steaks to go with his hopped sizer. Nate from Concord, New Hampshire writes, "The sous vide was interesting, as this is exactly what I do each Christmas with the prime rib roast that we have. I use my electric brew system, essentially the same thing as the high-gravity system, and I put a 10-pound roast in there with the pump recirculating and the controller holding at 135 degrees Fahrenheit. I leave it in there for about 6 to 10 hours and then get an iron skillet screaming hot to put a crust on it. I do that outside since it makes a lot of smoke." Nate says, "One thing I found for crusting was to take it out and dry it with paper towels to get the wetness off the outside. Next, I rub it down with a liberal amount of canola oil and then put it on the screaming hot skillet. That particular step seemed to give the nicest crunchy crust that I've found." Nate says, "I am also fermenting a 3.8% rye milk stout right now. That should be interesting." I bet. Sounds really tasty. Thanks, Nate. I love the idea of cooking a 10-pound prime rib roast for the holidays with precise temperature control. Wow. And a screaming hot skillet, iron skillet, just adds to the whole drama of the thing. You could, gather the family around at a safe distance and, do it right before you serve it on the table there. And for carving, I prefer an electric knife, by the way. Pairs well with an electric brewing system. We didn't use the recirculating pump like Nate suggested you do. We didn't use the recirculating pump when Steve and I shot that episode. But the producers of Le Gourmet TV on YouTube commented on our YouTube video that we do use the recirculating pump to ensure consistent temperature. And that's probably a good idea to be safe. We didn't check the temps in various places in the kettle while the steaks were in there to make sure that it was, holding steady at the proper temperature all around without the recirculating pump going on. It's not a big deal to hook up the pump, so why not? By the way, Steve and I tasted the Blackberry Pilsner that I, quote-unquote Pilsner, that I I'm defensive already about the Ryan High School people chiming in, but my wife suggested that I brew a blackberry pilsner as my next brew, and I did. I brewed a 2-gallon batch and put it on some nice, tasty frozen blackberries. I'm very happy with the way it turned out, and Steve and I tasted it yesterday, as I said, and Steve mentioned that it would make a great base for a lambic. So maybe next brew will be a kettle-soured rye beer with the berries added in the secondary. Sounds like a lot of fun. I love combining, experimenting with these different techniques and then combining them together to create something new, for us at least new. There is more news about the 12th anniversary celebration of our sponsors, Desiree and Dave of High Gravity in Tulsa. To celebrate their shops turning 12 years old, Desiree and Dave are having a party and offering some good deals. First off, from now until September 12th, you can get 12% off all of the High Gravity electric brewing systems. 12% off until September 12th. That's a heck of a deal. Plus, you can still take part in the raffle to give away a high-gravity brew-in-a-bag system or $1,000 in credit towards a Brew Easy or build-your-own brewery system that uses the high-gravity controllers. You can find out all the details about that raffle on highdgravitybrew.com. And the winner will be drawn on September 17th. Also on September 17th, Steve and I will be at High Gravity in Tulsa to have Basic Brewing stuff for sale and to sign from 4 to 6. And that's definite from 4 to 6. We may show up a little early. We probably won't stay late because we're set to be at the party, which will be at Burn Co. Barbecue from 7 until 10. And Desiree says Burn Co. is one of the top 50 barbecue places in the country, so I'm really excited about that. Tickets for the party are on sale now at I'm on automatic pilot here. They're on sale now at highdgravitybrew.com. And the tickets are limited. There's a limited number, so get yours quickly, and we hope to see you there. Find out about all this good stuff at highdgravitybrew.com. And happy 12th anniversary to Desiree and Dave on their store, highdgravitybrew.com. Okay, let's go on to our conversation with former homebrewer Nathan Zeender of Right Proper Brewing in D.C. with his homebrewing buddy Mike Tonsmeyer, the mad fermentationist. Well, Nathan Zeender, welcome back to Basic Brewing Radio.
It's been a while. Thank you so much.
Yeah, good to see you in 3D.
Yes, that's right. I know we see each other on that screen, and I had never done any whatever that's called. That's the only time I've ever Skyped in my life, and so yeah, it was pretty freaky. So this is much more my speed.
So what are we looking at? We've got beers in our hands now, and we're in the production facility. And you were started on the tour, and I rudely interrupted
rewind
you.
it.
Yes.
Yeah, I'll rewind it. So I'll just to catch everybody up to date, because we haven't talked in a few years. So in the last several years, the most important thing was that I've had 2 boys. So that was in 2 breweries, so 2 boys in 2 breweries. So we had Finn 3.5 years ago, and then Rory 5 months ago, Christmas Eve at home across the street, which was a lot of fun. And then the other news on the business side is we opened our brew pub in the Shaw neighborhood 2.5 years ago, so it was December 2013. And then we opened this production house and tasting room in this past December, so just right around the same time we had Rory, really. Wow. So we sort of timed those things well, But we're standing in a 6,000 square foot former, originally built as a bakery in the 1940s, and then most recently it was a really rundown auto repair shop that wasn't on the market. But when we decided to do a second brewery or production brewery, I sort of put some of there's a shared ownership, right? So I sat down with the other owners and said, well, if we're going to do another project, I'd like it to, be a small and personal project like the brew pub, and ideally in my neighborhood. And so we found this place across the street from where I homebrewed for 10 years, really, right? And so some of these recipes, this is really an outgrowth of what the basement sort of looked like. We had wine barrels in the basement, 59-gallon wine barrels, like 3 or 4 of those. Now we have 3 45 hectoliter fooders in their place, and stainless steel is an upgrade on food grade plastic and glass. So going from 5 gallons of those to these are 30 barrel tanks, but a lot of really the same ideas. The Lubitsch Touch over here, one of my favorite smoked beers, was pretty much the only beer I brewed as a home brewer more than once. And I was obsessed with this idea of like a pale smoked beer, and so I brewed that like maybe 6 or 7 times at home. And I'm proud to say that that is a beer that has made it into this endeavor, which is just an outgrowth of that endeavor. But what we'll do is like maybe just a quick walking tour here, and talk a bit about the kind of beers that we're brewing here. From day one at the brew pub, the reason it was such an attractive offer to come work at the brew pub was I was given complete freedom to brew whatever I wanted to. I was never told or asked to brew anything, and so sort of use it as a workshop space. It's a 5-barrel brew house over there. And so in the first year, we probably did more than 60, maybe 70 recipes. And we'll continue on. We still brew over there. Here, we're going to probably focus on maybe doing closer to like 20 or so. And that's either stuff that we've done before at the brew pub or close enough, or actually just throw that out the window, because yesterday we did a beer with Stan Hieronymus that was a pretty weird gruit, and I hadn't done a small batch of that. We jumped right in on it. So for the most part, it's things that we've either done or close to things that we're doing, especially except when we're especially inspired by someone like Stan. So with that, we're gonna walk over here to the fermentation hall. I'm gonna skip a lot of the hot side of the brewery because it operates the same as pretty much all the other 4,000 plus breweries in the United States. It is a couple facts. It's a 15-barrel brew house from SK, who's made in Slovenia, and it's sort of an upgrade. They took the like a pub system and just did some light upgrades on it. Been very happy with it. So we'll go directly into the fermentation hall, because this is, again, where sort of like our brewery might be different from a good number of breweries. So we have 6 30-barrel conicals, and then we have 3 45 hectoliter fooders. And so we break that into different sort of families of beers. So we have 3, currently we have 3 of those Saccharomyces, 3 of those 30-barrel tanks used for Saccharomyces beers. Then 2 of the tanks are used for in-tank lactobacillus fermentations. So with those, we have a sort of a heterofermented lactive strain that's adapted well to the brewery. So we can get beers down to 3.2 pH in tank and fermented down to a Plato or less, really, without any assistance from pitching another yeast strain or Brettanomyces or anything. So we've been really happy with that. And then we've got one other fermenter that is a support tank for the 3 fooders. So we do all our mixed fermentation beers in those. So there's a house culture that we've been repitching for a couple years, so probably several hundred generations. I stopped counting, really. But those beers start in stainless steel for about a week. Then we collect yeast for the next batch, and then we go into fooder for another generally 6 or more weeks of maturation to get our house character. These are French oak. They were used for 1 season by a winery in Virginia, so which was perfect for us. So we just use sort of like natural winemaking process with these. So no harsh chemicals, hot water, maybe some citric acid to clean things up if we need to. Some of the beers, like one we dry hop, so we always in the fooder, so we drain that tank with every use. But sometimes we do this sort of Solera stuff that Mike and I have been doing for years and years, where we don't drain the fooder all the way. Since we have the double batch to fill up, maybe we'll only take a half the batch. Then we'll have another beer ready to go that same day to fill in the headspace, so that just gives sort of more depth. Then we have a series of smaller casks over to the side, and that's a mix of red wine, gin, bourbon, and rum barrels, and we take sections of fooder out, put it in there, and that has more contact spaces. We're going to get real barrel character that we're not really looking for in the foeders. The foeders are just an environment for picking up our house character, really. But then if we want extra complexity or wood flavor or spirit character or whatever, we have these other casks put away that we can blend in to get very specific tastes in the future that we're looking for.
So let me ask you, while we're talking talking about wood. Well,
sorry.
You're doing a good job. But while we're still talking about wood, you say that with the foeders, you get this big, fancy, beautiful wooden things here, fermentation vessels. If you're not getting a lot of wood character, why not just use stainless steel for that part?
Yeah. So we actually, like I was alluding to, we've got we don't do any harsh chemical cleaning between because we've inoculated this with our house character, and so it's sort of like an inoculation vehicle. So all the Brett and lacto and everything actually live in the wood there. So we just do some light housekeeping between uses, really. And I'm sure over the years, each of these foeders will have its own identity, becomes dominant even different times of the year. They do have they're really nice foeders. They're modern. They've got a chilling plate that runs through the middle, so we can do pretty exact temperature control, which is good, so we can get very predictable results. But each foeder, with time, I'm sure will get its own identity. And so the more we're able to squirrel things away into smaller casks, too, will just give us more opportunities to blend to our taste in the future. And so it's pretty new to us. We've been very happy with the results so far. It's really great because with the three families of beers we do, we cover a huge range of flavors, and which is really, I like it when people can come in and we can offer them so many different sort of different tastes, really,
And so if you've got quite a pretty extensive beer list, and I looked at the list and I was. I couldn't make a decision, so I had you make a decision for me.
Right.
So what's the strategy of coming in and looking at your beer list of how people should make a decision about what to?
Yeah, I think first if they pick from one of these families, either Saccharomyces stainless steel beers, or this family of Berliner Weiss lactic fermented beers, or from the foeder beers, which are with the house culture, that's a good starting point, And then they can narrow. There might be 3 or 4 options in each of those families, so that might be a good way of. And we do small pours or flights of everything, so I think that can help to add on top of that. So at the other brewery, we usually have another 8 or 9 beers that are different from the beers we brew here. So if you hit both in a day, you could easily hit more than 20 different beers, which could just add to the confusion or the fun, really.
And sadly, it's a D.C. law issue that you can't cross-ship beers easily.
Yeah, you can't in D.C. You can't own 2 breweries, so this is actually technically a different company than the other one, so we actually have to sell beer from one to the other and distribute to our own brewery. But that's just the way that the laws are structured in D.C. And at some point, we may take that on and sort of challenge that, but right now it's 2 separate breweries under like sort of a family umbrella kind of, but we really do have to sell beer from one to the other.
Those crazy beer laws.
Yeah.
So if somebody didn't know anything about your brewery, what's the elevator pitch? How would you describe your beers? To give someone an idea of what they might expect should they come to visit? Yeah,
I'd say a lot of times we say that we're a yeast-focused brewery, or sometimes when I'm feeling kind of silly, I say that we're a yeast cult, really. So I'd say that our beers, in general, are relatively dry. We really, in the lineup right now, we only have one beer that has any real measurable amount of residual sugar. That's sort of a strong porter we do called Hexen. But I think that when you come here to the production breweries, the production brewery here in Brookland, if you taste the foeder beers, they're all using the same mixed culture strain, and those beers have a real identity and house character. Whereas something like our dry hop pale ale, it's a technical Saccharomyces beer. It's a dry hop pale ale. I think it's great as our best selling beer. But if I gave that recipe to another brewery and they were using similar water, and I could tell them the yeast and all that kind of everything else, they could make a beer that tastes pretty similar, probably. If I gave them all the technical specs, but then it'd be really hard for another brewery to replicate house mixed culture that's been repitched 200 times into these specific fooders, So that's, one thing about it is that, we sometimes, I think people sort of pigeonhole us into being a certain kind of brewery, but we are really doing all these different kinds of beers. Some people, I guess we have a reputation for doing relatively low alcohol beers. And, I guess a lot of our beers are, 3 or 4% alcohol, because that's the kind of beers, a lot of the very drinkable beers that I like, But I think we're able to get a lot of complexity in these 3 and 4% alcohol beers. We do a couple beers that are 7% alcohol. Those are the big ones for us, a Bière de Garde and a porter. But really, I would hope that our beers are just, people feel that they're, they're very personal beers to me. So I hope that people somehow pick up on the energy that I'm passing through these beers that we're creating here. I guess, this sort of yeast-forward kind of brewery is maybe, a pretty good descriptor, but, I'm going to let people just have, their own say and just come and visit us and give us a fair show to share, we love the feedback, so.
Well, I like what I've forgotten what you've given me.
Yeah. So what you have in your hand is Ornithology. So that's one of 4 foeder beers that we currently do. So 2 of the foeder beers are sort of our homages to the sort of farmhouse tradition. That's kind of funny when I try not to use the word, but you kind of have to. This doesn't look like a farm at all, but there's a field here. I wish that'd be nice. But so we do a grisette, so that would be relatively low alcohol, very dry, yeast-driven beer for everyday drinking. That would have hopefully a beer like this, would have been taste somewhat similar to a beer that would have been done in northern France, 150 years ago. And then we do also a Bière de Garde, which is the other end. So that farmer or the farmer's wife who I was brewing would have probably made one daytime drinking beer. There's 2 or 3% alcohol that everybody would have drunk, and then a special stronger beer, for putting down and for special occasions, for weddings and things like that, So what you're having now is a grisette called Ornithology, and that's an outgrowth of a beer that we did on the brew pub on a 5-barrel system called Ornette, after Ornette Coleman. And so that we still brew that beer, and that beer is brewed in an open stainless steel fermenter with 2 Saccharomyces strains, which are classic farmhouse strains. So we take that same recipe, we do it here in Brookland with the addition of our house mixed culture, so it's got Brettanomyces in there, and then we do it in foeder. And so we still brew that beer over there. It's really fun to have them side by side because the exact same recipe, dramatically different beers.
I didn't even realize they were the same beer until you just said that.
And so it's the same recipe. We changed the name slightly from Ornette to Ornithology, but it really is the same recipe, just given a different treatment, really.
Do you want to talk about the vintage program that you guys do?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. So we don't ever, going back to this whole idea of yeast cult or whatever, so we don't ever filter or pasteurize any of our beers. We don't do kettle souring because it would involve the genocide of millions and millions of healthy lactobacillus. So we do a lot of lactic fermentations in tank. So that means that our beers are still alive, and so from day one back at the brew pub, every time we were doing a mixed fermentation beer over there, we were squirreling away a couple of 2-3 kegs of those beers, keeping it cellar temperature, and then would re-release that beer on Tuesday nights. We still do it on a vintage Tuesday night every week. That's when usually the geekier people might show up, because you can try that same beer, might redo it, re-release it 3 months, 6 months, 9 months, a year or more, really. And so you can really see how this Brettanomyces is really working and transforming and esterizing these beers, eating up the sort of organic acids, creating all these wonderful tropical and spicy fruit aromas. The issue with those beers is that there's hyperattenuation in the keg, so we have to vent them off with some regularity, and we use like a flow control nozzle to support them correctly at the brew pub. And so we'll continue on that program here. And the natural outgrowth of that program is soon we hope to be bottle conditioning our foeder beers. And so then people can do that same experiment at home, right? So you buy it fresh with a small wild side, and if you like it that way, that's great, like Orval when it's fresh. Or if you like it at 6 months, you sit on for 6 months, and then you pop it when you're ready, or 9 months or a year or multiple years. So I'm really looking forward to that when people have that control of doing their Vintage Tuesday on any night of the week, whenever they want, in the safety and security of their own home. So we are
the prices on those are terrific in DC, and that's a big thing for you guys too. Not charging fancy beer prices for beer that is something that should be
So we've always been about sort of fairness of pricing, and so when we opened up the brew pub a few years ago, people were kind of shocked, I think, by the price of some of our beers, especially other breweries possibly, where we were able to do these a mixed fermentation beer for $6 for a full glass in a town where it's not unusual for beers like that to be $1 an ounce. DC is a kind of an expensive city to live in, and that filters down to what you eat and what you drink. So we've kept those prices in line. So it's usually most beers are $4 or $5 or $6 still.
And for the vintage, at $1 or whatever, it's half the price for half the amount sometimes.
Exactly. We do half pours for half the price too, and so I think it's pretty fair.
So this is a delicious beer. It's not. My palate's probably wrecked by this whole day, but it's got some nice, sort of saison-y or farmyardy, kind of characteristics. But it's nice and light and fairly dry.
Yeah, and so the beer probably got almost no residual sugar in it. And so, that's the point of like beer like Grisette or what we think of these lower alcohol table beers, and that saison tradition, right? Or it's almost should be like a really good tasting Miller Lite. You know what I'm saying? Like a very dry beer that's thirst quenching and you want to drink and drink and drink all day long, and hopefully if we've done our jobs well, it's like that. It's something that you want to keep returning to, and you won't be bored by, because I think it's got a very enticing nose, and it doesn't weigh you down because it's as dry as it is, really. But with that, we should probably get some more beers for you guys. I think.
Right. Yeah. And what has everybody got different stuff? Steve's done with his. What did you get? Do you remember?
I had a Berliner Weiss. I don't know the name of it.
Teeth of Lions Rule the Divine, I think. And so we do a series, like I was saying before, we do these lactic fermented beers. And so Teeth of Lions Rule the Divine is sort of our spring tonic. So it's a Berliner Weiss that has dandelion flower, leaf, and root in it. And then it's dry hot with Centennial and Chinook. And then right now we have Berliner Weiss on called Diamonds Fur Coat Champagne. That was
which I got.
Yeah, I tasted that.
Which Mike had, and that was built to mimic some of the flavors or impressions of like a brut champagne. So that has elderflowers in it for like a floral quality, fresh grapefruit zest for like citric acid, and then it's dry hot with Hallertau Blanc, so it gives the white wine or gooseberry sort of flavors.
It's very subtle. I mean, you think of those flavors. I think maybe someone listening that's going to hit you over the head. It really is at that level where it's adding depth and complexity and freshness and zestiness, but you're not necessarily going to pick out each of those flavors. I mean, it's that classic Belgian idea that if you're adding enough to clearly identify each of them, you maybe have added too much.
Exactly.
And speaking of Stan, that's I think one of his lines.
We're trying to be we try to be pretty nuanced with a lot of this kind of stuff. Even when we're doing beers with botanicals, like I was just telling off mic, we were talking about how Stan Haranis was here yesterday, and we were brewing a Gruit, and was we cast out 17 barrels or so, and it was just handfuls of different herbs. It was a lot of different herbs, but just handfuls. It wasn't like armfuls. Just throw it in there and like make this beer taste like a the health food store or something like that would smell. So it's really, we're looking to build something even when it's using non-traditional ingredients or whatever else, it to be a balanced and drinkable thing, even when it's challenging,
Earlier today, Josh Chapman was raving about the seaweed beer you guys did with Oxbow Brewing, and how you could taste it, but it wasn't over the top. It didn't taste like you're drinking a big pail full of ocean water or anything
exactly.
like that.
I mean, there's a lot of beers now that they clearly say what they are, whether it tastes like some kind of cake or a pie or a whatever, or mimosa or something like that. And that's fine. Not really what we do, with the case of this beer, we did a beer with Oxbow, and they wanted to do a beer with some salinity, lactic fermented beer with some salinity, and they're on the Maine coast, so we found there's a family up there that forages seaweed for the Maine coast, and I was like, wow, that'd be a great way of capturing salinity and capturing a sense of place. We brewed it in D.C., but all the seaweed came from there. And the way we did that was, since none of us had worked with seaweed before, we did some of it in the mash tun. We did some of it in the Grant to constantly taste it as we went. Then we did some of it in the boil kettle. And that way we sort of got it to where we wanted it to be. We didn't just throw a ton in there and be like, well, this is going to taste like seaweed, And so I think we were able to get some nuance to it, like some seaweed flavor, but really more of a briny kind of character.
So what's the advice that you would give the home brewer, having been a home brewer yourself, on trying to capture the spirit of all this? They don't have the fooders, they don't have all the fun gear.
Yeah.
But what advice would you give a home brewer who wants to aspire to brewing something like that?
Yeah. Well, I mean, I think how it played out for me is that first step was going from my basement, where I could brew up to a barrel at a time, all the equipment to do that, to a brew pub that had a 5-barrel system, and so it wasn't that big of a leap, right? So that was pretty manageable, and then going from 5 barrels up to 15 barrels now, that was pretty manageable too.
I think at the brew pub, you're not sending beer anywhere else. You don't really have to worry about, you have total control over it. And here, you serve some here, but it's in D.C. Are you self-distributing to Montgomery County?
Yeah, so we just started doing Montgomery County this week. So about 90% of our beer leaves the brewery. And Mike brings up a good point. It's a loss of control at that point. You don't know how people are handling it. We work with a great distributor who keeps it under refrigeration, and most accounts then receive it and put it under refrigeration, Because
it's a living thing.
Yeah, and in the case of our dry hop pale ale, we want that to be cold all the time. If it's one of our fooder beers, I don't mind if they actually let it sit out for a while because the Brettanomyces will, can continue to work. But a lot of our beers
might get overcarbonated, and then you don't have your staff knowing to vent it, knowing to flow control. And then I feel like bottles will be the next step in that. The beer's got to be pretty dry going into a bottle. You've got to know where it's going to stop, and it's not going to keep dropping.
And that'll be a fun challenge, is taking on bottle conditioning, because I'm well aware of I bottle conditioned for 8 or 9 years at home, so I know the theory of it here, and so I'll just be again scaling those same ideas up and just recirculating really well to make sure that the sugar is well dispersed and using the correct amount of yeast and things like that. But really, for me, the fact that I was given sort of free rein to work probably helped too, where I wasn't just brew this. So I was able to really put myself and my identity into what I was doing, so that was a happy place to be, and, happy people do happy work. So that probably had something to do with it. I think I was just really lucky to get the opportunity, and it could have failed horribly, and luckily it didn't, but it was just the sort of the right opportunity, and the scale seemed correct. We're still small. Even when we went to this production brewery, this is still relatively small scale, at 6,000 square feet with a tasting room in the front. We'll probably never in this space could go beyond 5,000 or 6,000 barrels, especially when we're doing slower processed beers like the fooder beers,
But that's not something you want. I mean, your goal has never been to have a 100,000 square foot brewery with shift brewers who are executing your vision in 300 barrel, tanks.
Exactly. It's in the brewery is across the street from my house, and I think that speaks to some of this vision that Mike's talking about, where I like my neighborhood. I like, pouring beer for people in my neighborhood. I don't have any intentions.
Your family, having time to live your life and pursue other interests. every time I talk to Nathan, he's geeking out on, I was at this restaurant, I was drinking orange wine, I got these flavors, I was doing this, doing that. I feel like if all you did is work, your vision gets so small and you stop. Fine, you go to a beer fest and you taste the beers that other people, you need time to travel, you need time to taste other things and see other things and to get new ideas.
And just this idea now that we're at 4,500 breweries, which is, and we're going back to that. People are, it's becoming more and more localized,
Exactly.
and so you don't have to be. It's going to be tough to be a large brewery unless you're just buying up, like other smaller breweries.
You don't want to be fighting for tap handles at the airport, fighting for,
Right.
Like that's no fun. That's not.
Well, my position, and I've said it before, but it's kind of like, the brewery business is kind of like the restaurant business. I mean, not every restaurant is McDonald's or a giant chain. You have worldwide chains, you have nationwide chains, you have regional chains, you have citywide 2-3 store operations or restaurant operations, and then you have the mom and pop store that is family run, that is fairly small, that doesn't want to be anything bigger than that, and they're perfectly happy and they're doing exactly what they want.
Testing their new release,
right? I mean, they're doing
what's the best thing they can make, what can they get, and what do they want to make?
So it's all and if you guys grow kind of naturally into something else, I think that's great. But if you're happy in what you're doing and you're making great stuff and you're successful at this scale, then all the better.
Exactly. And we didn't actually have any real long-term plan to do a production brewery. Like, I was pretty happy just doing the 5-barrel brew pub. But then, that's also a restaurant, and it's tough to make restaurants profitable, and it was profitable right from the bat. So I think that was just, and we had investors and everything, and so there's good incentive to do something else. And the laws changed in D.C. to allow for tasting rooms to be able to sell full pours of beers, and that was really had something to do, I think, with why we wanted to do a production brewery, because it's like sort of having another brew pub without the kitchen, and kitchen is a lot of management, a lot of staff. We could run this whole operation on a very small staff. There's just me and Chris doing all the brewery operations here, and we have someone that does general management of the tasting room, and then some part-time people, wonderful people who pour the beers. So it's a very small operation, and that's where I'm happy, So.
Awesome. Well, I think we should go taste some more beers.
Yeah.
So congratulations on your success so far, and best wishes for the future.
Thank you so much, and it's great to meet you in person.
Likewise.
Let's drink some beers.
Well, thanks again to Nathan and Mike. And congratulations to Nathan on his growing family, his excellent and imaginative beers, and for having a production brewery in his own neighborhood that he can just walk to and brew amazing beers. You look up the definition of winning in the dictionary, and you just see a picture of Nathan there with a beer in his hand and a kid in the other hand. Great boy! What a great trip! Still more stuff coming from D.C. and Baltimore and HomebrewCon in the coming weeks, and new stuff as well. Trying to mix it up. In the meantime, if you have brewing questions, show suggestions, or just want to say howdy, write to james@basicbrewing.com, or just fill out the contact form on basicbrewing.com, and please don't forget to tell us where you're from. Check out our support link where you can throw a couple of bucks into the tip jar by subscribing financially to the podcasts. Be sure to check out our DVDs, Extract Brewing and Partial Mashing, Stepping into All Grain, Low-Tech Lagering and Decoction Mashing, and Introduction to Wine Kits. You can find them all on our site. Get a free Basic Brewing bottle opener with any DVD combo, and you can check out our Basic Brewing shirts in the store as well. You can find our logbooks where you can track and log up to 50 batches of beer. Check all those out at basicbrewingshop.com. And thanks to everybody who's continued to click on our Amazon.com link. It was a very busy week this past week, and we greatly appreciate the support. Our featured products this week that were purchased through the link are Ubiquiti Networks Unify AP Enterprise Wi-Fi System 5-pack and Sanuk Men's Beer Cozy Light Flip-Flop Charcoal. Thanks again, everybody, and remember, I can't tell who bought what, so no worries there. Just click on the Amazon.com logo on our site the next time you feel like Amazon shopping. We greatly, Greatly appreciate your support. Don't forget you can also join the American Homebrewers Association and subscribe to Brew Your Own magazine through the associated links on basicbrewing.com. Well, that's all until next time. Until then, thanks for listening, everybody. I'm James Spencer. Production help for Basic Brewing Radio and our website is provided by Kelly Dodson. Basic Brewing Radio is a production of Active Voicing. We'll talk to you next time, everybody. So long.